Professor Way, it is such a pleasure to welcome you as a non-executive director to the board of Alcidion. You have a breadth of experience in managing tertiary hospital facilities, together with the associated challenges of workforce and resource allocation on the front line. These are key issues which we are deeply invested in addressing here at Alcidion. Let's start by learning more about you. Andrew, can you provide a quick snapshot of your career in the healthcare industry here in Australia and overseas?
So I came over in 2009 to Melbourne to take up the role of Chief Executive of Alfred Health. Alfred Health is one of the major hospital systems in Victoria and provides a wide range of tertiary and specialist services. Prior to that, I'd had an extensive career in the NHS, mostly in large hospital groups, and quite often those hospitals had a very large and extensive academic component. And so my interests have been in the specialist services, in the highly complex field, but also in the way in which they relate to research and the way in which we develop new and different ways of finding treatment for patients. Underpinning all of that, I've had an extensive track record of being involved in the way in which technology supports health, both in the administrative roles and in its clinical roles.
You were awarded an AM in 2019 for services in support of clinical research and leadership. What are some of your standout professional achievements?
So I'd like to think that the recognition of the award in Australia was for the work that I did at the Alfred. So we created Australia's first, what's known as Academic Health Science Centre. So that's a grouping of organisations that come together to do this piece of work around connecting clinical activity to research. So helping clinicians frame the questions that are going to change the way in which they work, finding researchers that can answer those questions and feed the answers back to clinicians for early adoption. And that connection between clinical services and academia has been a key mark of what I've been trying to do for most of my career. And that's the reason it was recognised in the way it was.
You joined the board of Alcidion only recently. What has attracted you to us?
So I've got some experience, as you know, with Alcidion from my time at Alfred Health. And I was really intrigued by the product range that you've got, in particular the Miya product, which we took on at the Alfred in great depth. And I think the challenge in health services, as I see it, is that we take on technology, and the one thing it does do is increase costs. So we have to look at how do we afford that increase in costs as we can do more for patients. And part of the products that Alcidion has allows us to look at how we can be more efficient about the way in which we organise care and the way in which we use the resources we've got. So I was really interested in how that could be adopted and used within the health system. And when you asked me about whether I would be interested in working more closely with Alcidion, that was what immediately came to mind. Making a longer term improvement in the way in which we work across health systems to provide better care for patients, more timely care for patients.
We're certainly pleased to have you on board. Andrew, in your opinion, why is it such an exciting time to be working at the forefront of digital health innovation?
All health systems are looking for ways in which they can provide the same care, better care, more care, but with the minimum additional resources. And all modern economies are finding the challenge of supporting the expectations of their communities with the healthcare that they want, an increasing challenge. So I think that challenge for me represents an opportunity to look at the way in which we organise ourselves differently, the way in which we provide care differently. And technology, I think, is the way into that. So technology gives us an opportunity to look at different settings, different configurations of care, bringing people together in different ways that ultimately, I hope, will provide better insights into the care that's needed, more appropriate settings for the care to be provided, and ultimately better care for the same or lower cost.
What are some of the key issues that can be addressed in healthcare by embracing the digitisation of clinical workflows?
Clinical workflows, if they're adopted in the right way, can become what you might call a standard operating procedure or a clinical guideline. And for me, the way in which I've thought about it and tried to persuade the teams that I've worked with to adopt this sort of technology is to think carefully about the clinical pathway, get clinicians to develop the pathway they think is most appropriate for patients, and then monitor it, not adhere to it slavishly, but to say, here's what we expect to happen, and then use the technology to record what actually happens, and then study the variations between the expected and the actual, and change the actual as necessary to see whether the intended pathway is actually the best pathway for most patients that are seen. And that's both patients specific, but also contextualized in the setting. So not every hospital has all the technology it might need to provide the way in which a condition might be investigated. So their response to that would need to be refined depending on what they have immediately available, and then decide to escalate elsewhere, where someone that has it all available might choose to use it in a different order with a different flow. So I think there's a lot that can be done to look at supporting clinicians in the way in which they make decisions to improve the way in which we use the resources and we provide care for patients within the envelope of funding that's available.
Andrew, you've had the benefit of interacting with Alcidion's technology at the Alfred, as you mentioned. Can you share your views on the role Miya is playing in addressing challenges within hospitals?
So I think Miya has a number of different levels it works at. And for me, there was a real opportunity to start to look at the way in which the overall organisation was being used by patients. And so by the way in which we localise the system and its adoption, we were able to put flags in the system that showed where people were waiting, where decisions were not being made in a timely way, where patients could be moved into a more appropriate setting. And it gave management an opportunity to work with clinicians with focused conversations about, is this the most appropriate setting? What is the question that needs to be answered? Are we waiting for the result? Can we move that along to expedite the care that that patient was due to receive? The next level up, which was the one I was most interested in, was the ability to get an overview of the whole organisation that started to tell us about, across the 1,000 beds, here are the things that routinely and commonly trip us up from being effective and efficient in the way in which we deliver care. Should we be concentrating on the big picture and changing those as a whole for the organisation, whilst also dealing with the individual patient's issue?
So truly a control room.
Yeah, absolutely. And the intention was, when we took up the product, that's where it would go. And I retired midway through that journey, so I'm really excited to find out from the organisation how they've continued to adopt that program.
Andrew, thank you for sharing your time today and for giving us such detailed insights into the customer landscape for health innovation. A reminder that Alcidion is publicly traded on the Australian Securities Exchange under the ticker code ALC. Thank you for joining us.